The city slept under a heavy sky, but not everyone could rest. David Cross, a community journalist with little more than a battered camera and a stubborn sense of justice, had been chasing the story of the Ashwood Avenue Massacre for months. 5 lives were stolen in a crumbling apartment, and the police wasted no time blaming Samuel Price, a quiet father too who worked double shifts at the factory. The newspapers called Samuel a butcher. The streets whispered his name like a curse. And yet, something about the story never sat right with David. He had grown up in the same neighborhood as Samuel. He knew the man knew his children. Samuel wasn't violent. He wasn't reckless. He was exhausted. And that exhaustion didn't kill 5 people in one night. David's investigation began small. Dusty reports, shaky witness accounts, scraps of police notes left behind in trash bins. But late one evening, while scrolling through archive footage, he found something the official story never mentioned. A shadowy figure stepping into the building just before the massacre, broad-shouldered, moving with the sharp precision of someone who had training. It wasn't Samuel. And worse, it wasn't even investigated. The more David dug, the clearer the picture became. The massacre wasn't random. It was targeted. Those who died had been scheduled to testify in a corruption inquiry against certain officers. Their voices had been silenced before they could ever speak. The city wanted a monster. The police needed a scapegoat. Samuel Price was perfect. David knew he was being watched. Cars idled too long outside his apartment. His phone buzzed with static when he spoke to sources. Once, when he came home late, his door was cracked open, drawers pulled out like someone had searched his life. Still, he pressed forward. One night, in the back room of a corner store, an old friend passed him a brown envelope. Inside were confidential memos, blueprint of raids carried out by a special unit. Every raid targeted poor black families. Every raid ended in silence. And at the top of the chain was Detective Harris, a man celebrated in the media as a hero cop. The same man who had first announced Samuel's arrest. David's heart raced as the truth pieced itself together. The Ashwood Massacre wasn't Samuel's crime. It was Harris's cover-up. David couldn't go to the police. Couldn't trust the system. So he turned to the only weapon he had left. Exposure. At 3 a.m. in his cramped one-bedroom apartment, David uploaded everything. Footage, documents, audio files to his underground news channel. The video shook the city awake. Viewers saw the grainy figure entering the building. They read the memos ordering quiet removals. They listened to leaked audio of officers laughing about tying up loose ends. For the first time, the narrative cracked. People marched. Streets filled with chants. Free Samuel Price. We want the truth. The story David had uncovered belonged to everyone now. The power shifted, and those who thought they could bury the truth began to sweat. But truth is dangerous. The morning after the video went viral, David received a call. The number was blocked, but the voice was unmistakable. "You should have kept your head down," Detective Harris growled. "You think exposing this changes anything? You don't know half of it." David froze. Then Harris said something that chilled him more than anything else. "You think Samuel's the only one we buried? You don't even know where the bodies are." Click. The line went dead. David's hand shook. He realized Harris wasn't just behind the massacre. He was behind dozens of disappearances no one had ever connected. Hours later, Samuel Price walked out of jail. The charges against him collapsed under the weight of public outrage. The people cheered as Samuel hugged his children for the first time in months. David watched in the crowd, tears stinging his eyes. For once, it felt like truth had won. But deep down, he knew freedom came with a shadow. The same system that framed Samuel still breathed. Harris was still out there, shielded by a badge and a network of silence. Samuel was free, yes, but Harris was more dangerous than ever. That night, David sat in his small kitchen, staring at his reflection in a cracked window. The truth had freed one man, but painted a target on his own back. He remembered Harris's words. "You don't even know where the bodies are." The lesson was clear. Truth can save lives, but it also paints you as the next threat to silence. The rain hadn't stopped all night. It hammered the city like an endless warning. every drop pounding against cracked pavement outside David Cross's apartment. The photograph lay on his desk. Samuel's children laughing in the courtyard, and in the shadows behind them, Detective Harris, watching like a hunter who never left the field. The note on the back still burned in David's mind. This was never about Samuel. It's about you, and now it's about them. David had seen threats before. Anonymous messages, blocked calls, but this was different. Harris wasn't hiding. He wanted David to know. He wanted David to feel the weight of fear every time those kids stepped outside. And it was working. David couldn't shake the image of Samuel's daughter and son. Innocent faces wrapped in laughter, unaware of the danger crawling around them. He thought about the promise he had made, to Samuel, to himself, that truth would mean freedom. But what if truth had only made them targets? Still, David knew one thing. He couldn't walk away now. David packed his camera bag and slipped into the streets. If Harris had left a photograph, it meant he was taunting him. It also meant there were more secrets hiding in plain sight. He retraced Harris's steps, starting with the abandoned warehouse at the edge of Ashwood Avenue, a place whispered about in the neighborhood but avoided after dark. The windows were boarded, the air thick with rot. Inside, David found boxes stacked high, old police files, sealed evidence bags, photographs yellowed with time. Some files dated back 10 years. Cases of missing men and women, all of them black, all of them quietly written off as runaways or addicts. David's hands trembled as he snapped photo after photo. These weren't isolated tragedies. They were part of a pattern. Harris's unit had been erasing people long before Samuel Price. And the worst part? Some of the names on those files were people David knew, neighbors, friends, people who had simply disappeared. By dawn, David's findings were live on his channel. The city erupted. Protests swelled larger than ever, voices thundering through the night. The people weren't just demanding Samuel's freedom anymore. They were demanding answers for everyone who had vanished under Harris's watch. Crowds filled the streets, chanting the names of the disappeared. Homemade signs bobbed through the air. Where are our people? Stop the silent killings. Samuel Price stood with his children at the front of the march, his arm around them, tears streaming down his face. For once, his pain was not hidden. It was the fuel for a city that refused to be silenced. The power had shifted again. But power, David knew, always invited backlash. Late that night, as David returned to his apartment, he noticed his door was unlocked. His chest tightened. Slowly, he pushed it open. The place was wrecked. Papers scattered, drawers overturned. His laptop, the one with all his files, was gone. And sitting at his desk, calm as ever, was a familiar face. Caleb Vance, a fellow journalist David had trusted with leaks before. Someone he thought was an ally in exposing the truth. Caleb looked up, guilt etched across his face. "I didn't want it to come to this, David," he whispered. "They have my family. Harris said if I didn't hand over your files, they'd be next." David's stomach dropped. Betrayal didn't come from enemies. It came from friends. Before David could answer, a flashbang rolled across the floor. The room was filled with smoke and light. He coughed, blinded, as heavy boots thundered inside. Black-clad officers stormed in, their weapons raised. Harris's voice cut through the chaos. "End of the line, Cross." David's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his camera bag and dove for the fire escape, bullets tearing holes in the rusted metal rails behind him. He sprinted into the alley, heart pounding, lungs burning. He escaped, but barely. Behind him, the building burned. Everything he had gathered, every file, every photograph, was reduced to ash. Justice had demanded proof, and proof had been stolen in the flames. David limped through the night, his clothes torn, his body aching. For the first time, he wondered if truth was enough. He had freed Samuel, yes. He had lit a fire in the streets. But what good was a fire if those in power could smother it with fear, betrayal, and bullets? He remembered the faces in those files, the people no one would ever hear from again. The weight of their silence pressed on him like stone. The lesson was bitter. Truth doesn't just demand courage. It demands sacrifice. and the price is never paid in full. As dawn crept over the city, David stumbled into the protest crowd, his camera bag clutched tight. Samuel spotted him, relief flooding his face. But before David could speak, his phone buzzed. A message. No number, no name, just a video file. He pressed play. The screen lit up with shaky footage. It showed Samuel's children again this time, not laughing. They were sitting in the back of a van, hands bound, fear etched on their faces. Then Harris's voice filled the audio. Round 3, Cross. Let's see what truth costs you now. David froze, the phone slipping from his hand. The crowd around him roared, unaware of the storm that had just begun. But the nightmare isn't over. Part 2 will reveal the price of truth, and it's darker than anyone imagined.